recording it. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to do a webinar. Hopefully we give you some good learnings today regarding thought leadership. We've invited an expert on content thought leadership to the table here. So my name's Colin, the GM of Clearview Social. We're a platform that helps professional services firms, many of the largest law firms in the US, to share their content on social media. And in order for that content to get high engagement, it needs to be high quality. In order for lawyers to want to participate in sharing that content, they need to perceive that it would make them thought leaders and perceived positively by their peers. And James is just the person to speak to us authoritatively on this topic. He's the CEO of Passel, and we're very happy to have him here today answering some questions about content.
Thank you very much, Colin. Yeah, so I think as you know, but and the people who don't know us or just know us by the orange octopus, Passel is essentially a content marketing platform directly for professional service firms. It's essentially technology and process that enables and empowers lawyers and consultants, those who sell what's in their heads, to showcase that expertise online quickly and easily, and empowers the people who look after those lawyers and consultants and make them do their business effectively, empower them to actually run their thought leadership programs. So that's what we're up to. I'm looking forward to chatting to you for the next little while about it all. So
awesome. Yeah, and you have a pretty deep background with marketing and especially content marketing to lean on for this conversation as well.
Yes, right? So I've been with Passel for 7 years since we've commercialized. We're a privately funded technology firm, so we do things the old-fashioned way, make money and then spend it. And really, since the 90s, I've been working with Adam and Tom, who own Passel. This is our third technology firm. And in all that time, we've been working out how best to use the internet to drive business. So I think our first content-based website, we didn't know it was called content back then, was in 1997. So yeah, we've been doing it for a little while.
Wow.
and kind of steadily working out how it works most effectively. And particularly now, as I say, our focus is on professional services and getting them to showcase their knowledge and expertise, show what they know.
Good stuff. My background, I've run an ad agency which is focused on SEO. So content marketing was king. That is the way to win with SEO right now. You can't really force things through links or any on-site SEO tricks anymore. It's really about the content that terminates a user's search query. So does that content actually fulfill the user's search query? And did they find what they were looking for? And you need high quality content to do that. So let's just jump right in. So I'd like to talk a little bit first about common hurdles that firms that you and I talk to every day face when they're trying to determine what their content marketing strategy should look like. You guys have, I'm sure, lots of real life examples of firms that you've helped with content production, and in the best cases, you've actually gotten the lawyers to participate in writing their own content using the Passel platform, which is that's an impressive hurdle to get over. It's, lawyers are not known to be bloggers, so maybe you could share some examples and some of the things that you've had to jump over in order to get folks onto that path of actually participating.
No, you're spot on. I suppose that's kind of the secret sauce. Law firms and consultancies are as everyone on this webinar knows, they're an odd bunch. They're not normal companies. Partnerships are not normal companies. If you're a Coca-Cola and you're in sales and marketing, you get to be in charge of sales and marketing, and everyone does what you say. In a law firm, it's a collective of, if you've got 200 partners, it's 200 bosses. And so we always divide law firms into fee earners, on the one hand, the lawyers, the consultants, and on the other, the fee enablers, the people who enable those fee earners to actually make a dollar and run their businesses. And frankly, one set without the other is pointless. And when it comes to the hurdles, I suppose it's worth having a look at what's the difference between what we've seen as an effective thought leadership program and one that doesn't work. We've been doing this for a while, so we've kind of worked it out. And the difference between one that works and one that doesn't work, in our experience, is essentially there are 4 pillars to it. The number one, the thought leadership program must be author-centric. So again, Coca-Cola, one big firm, sales and marketing in the middle. Sales and marketing can do it all. You know, what they say goes. They can share everything on brand, on expertise, and everything. When it comes to law firms, of course, you've got 200 partners, you've got 200 knowledgeable experts in their niche. And pretending from marketing and BD and comms that you could possibly know what they know about their niche in law, that they've been, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of days knowledge. They're really the experts. So you have to, the content creation must be author-centric. It must come from the lawyers, the consultants, and those fee enablers must be enabled to empower them to create that content. That's the key. So that's number one. Number two is effective governance. You know, they're law firms. this is the internet. You've got to, obviously for your own marketing and comms perspective, you've got to have governance. You know, you need to have checks, but also most importantly, that the lawyers have to feel that they're in a safe space. The consultants have to feel they're in a safe space to create content. They'll often say they're too busy, but they're too scared. Imposter syndrome's massive with people who know an awful lot. And so that governance is crucial. So author-centric governance and effective governance. And then we always, once you've got what essentially is a digital asset, so you've made it easy to create that content, then you've got that digital asset, then it's create once, so that authors created the content, and then you publish everywhere. So you make sure that the lawyer can share it, you make sure that you're set up as a firm to share it, and you make sure that all the colleagues of that lawyer or consultant can share it. And so that effective create once, publish everywhere. And then finally, and I think the most important thing is feedback. So story that my colleague Connor, who I've worked with for many years in past companies too, he always says is, if you were going 10-pin bowling and you threw your ball down the lane and you're about to hit the 10 pins, and just when the pins were about to fall, a curtain came down and you couldn't see what happened, you probably wouldn't throw another ball. So if you create a piece of content and absolutely nothing comes back to you as far as what happened with that, who it impacted, why it was of any use to anybody, especially yourself, then it won't work. But if you can get feedback in a timely fashion, effectively, then it works. And that's kind of what we'll talk about today. But it was brought to life. One of my colleagues, well, three of my colleagues were on a call this morning with a consulting firm that we've just finished a 6-week proof of value with. We always start with, you know, the sort of 20, 30 consultants or lawyers on a proof of value. And the feedback was really interesting because the consultant came on, and I won't name the firm or the consultant, and he said, before, it used to be really, really hard to create any type of content on his website. So he felt no ownership of it, because he would create something, he'd write a Word document usually, that would get pinged around all over the place. He had no idea where it actually went. It just got a lot of red lines on it. And then at some point, and this was often days or weeks, it would appear on the website for him, and then he'd hear nothing. So he wasn't that, number one, he wasn't that keen on the process. Number two, he wasn't that keen on marketing. You know, he didn't think that because of that, it wasn't that they weren't any good at their jobs. It was just that our process didn't work for him in any way, because he got nothing back from it. Anyway, six weeks giving passively, which is awesome. But he created 2 posts, which is fantastic. Actually in 4 weeks, he created 2 posts. They were made live within hours, which was key. So he did the effort, and then he saw the result immediately. And then he was able to share it effectively using email. He sent it to a bunch of people. He's off on a trip to Japan, and he wanted to drum up some meetings in Japan. So what he did is he wrote these posts, and then he used them via email to write to the people he'd like to meet in Japan. So it wasn't a kind of a weird reach out saying, hey, I'm coming to Japan, I'd love to meet you, because that's awkward and frankly not very kind of professional servicey. So what he did was said, hey, I thought these would be of interest to you. By the way, I happen to be in Tokyo next week, or in 2 weeks' time. It'd be great to catch up. And he set up 4 meetings off the back of those 2 bits of content he wrote. And that's the story. You know, so if you get rid of those hurdles, which is, you know, if you don't do it author-centric, if you don't have governance, if it's not quick, if you don't have a publishing system and you don't have feedback, and they don't do it again, then then you don't get that result. Whereas if you do make it really straightforward for people, then they take it into their own hands, they own it, and then it results in positive business outcomes. So that was kind of exciting. That was the story this morning. We've got lots of those, but that's the key is technology process support to enable the fee enablers to empower the fee earners, lawyers, consultants, to be able to basically take charge of their own thought leadership programs.
That's great. And so at Clearview, we often talk to law firms that don't feel like they have enough content production happening at the firm in order to be able to employ a tool that syndicates the content and generates positive ROI for the firm. So, and I think when a marketing professional at a law firm is trying to create a content calendar, they have a few different options. They can go out there and they can find content outside of their firm that might represent a practice area or a piece of content that they think would be well matched to the message they're trying to put out, and they can share that on their social media feeds. They can write an article within marketing and maybe try to solicit lawyers' opinions on that article, maybe get a quote, maybe not, and try to frame it in a voice that lawyers would want to share and would present the firm in a positive light. Or the most ideal strategy is something that you described, where they actually empower the lawyers to actually own the content and start participating actively in the strategy. And I would imagine to a lot of marketers at law firms, that sounds daunting. That's a very difficult hurdle to get. I know you described some ways that you can get over that hurdle, but I bet kind of the biggest challenge is to get that flywheel turning and to actually get those first few pieces out, get that feedback loop to a point where lawyers feel very positive about that piece of content. Obviously, the professional that you talked about that booked those meetings, I'm sure that person's going to be a very active participant in the strategy. They're on the flywheel and they're moving, but I'm sure there, even at that firm, maybe a lot of other either naysayers or folks that just, they don't feel comfortable putting themselves out there, and they don't see that as a good alternative use of their time relative to fee producing work. So how do you, as a marketing or business development professional at a law firm, actually get that flywheel moving so that people would, outside of marketing, would like to participate in that process?
Yeah, and I think as with you guys, it's the same as a technology firm. Our responsibility is not just to deliver technology, but also to deliver support and deliver consulting and deliver best practice. Because I haven't met a single marketing or BD person in a law firm or consultancy who says, "Oh, I think I might just sit around today. I'm not too busy." You know, they are getting hit every which way, every day. And the fact that they manage to accomplish as much as they do is always deeply impressive to me. The key to it, and you're right, it's like there's no single piece of technology, there's no single silver bullet that's going to solve everything, and that includes Passel. You know, this isn't a silver bullet. What you're talking about is ultimately driving change and driving digital transformation. And kind of going at a high level back from this, the things that are on our side as far as digital marketeers and digital and folk who are helping kind of drive that digital transformation is, you know, law firms have always known, and consultancies have known about physical presence and the importance of it and the investment within it. Because if you go into any law firm, you walk into a beautiful lobby with fabulous desk, and you walk upstairs into fantastic meeting rooms with lovely artwork. You know, I've been in meeting rooms that, you know, are furnished more expensively than my entire house, you know. So they understand physical presence, and they understand the importance of it, and they understand why the investment's worth it. Now, obviously, digital presence has been increasing since the 90s, right? When we started building websites for firms. That accelerated during COVID. You know, that accelerated during the period of time where people just worked remotely and clients didn't go into offices. They did, however, go onto websites. And, you know, every time I've been into 3 law firms in the last 6 months, which is ridiculous. I used to go in every week. Every time I go in, I ask the person on the desk how many clients have been in, and it's always less than a handful. Now, some of these law firms I've been into, they have pastry chefs, you know, they have in-house pastry chefs to look after their clients. Now, they understand that an investment there, but everyone's digital. So there's a conversation and a move which we know is happening through all law firms, and it's going to accelerate with economic headwinds next year, which is, you know, this shift to digital. So we're in the right, you know, marketeers, comms, and us, we're in the right space. We know this tide is rising. We know that the professional, the partners themselves, the associates, they are looking and saying, okay, where are my clients? Where are my colleagues? Where are my future colleagues? Are they in the office or are they digital? Now, some of them are going to be in the office, no doubt about it, but that digital is increasing. So that means, I'm coming back to your question, that means that we're in the right space. You've got a solid foundation, the tide's rising. It's always good to be in a boat that the tide's rising on, right? And then it's about making it absolutely easy and straightforward. If you put anyone who's worked with any professional services expert, they're ridiculously smart, intellectually curious, but can fall over on the smallest hurdle when it comes to a process. And as you say, it's like, why would I do that when I've got fee earning work to do? And what you can do is change behavior a little bit, and you do it a little bit at a time. So we always start PASL. If ever we, you know, if we get invited in, we're lucky enough to get invited into any firm. We always start with a proof of value. It's 2 months, cost free. Start with 20 lawyers, 20 consultants. Prove concept. Show everybody that this thing works. And then, of course, you've got 20 champions. And then it can go up and up and up. You don't just suddenly drop in a piece of tech and say, hey, you're done. It takes years. And with support from, in our case, client success team, who work every week, you know, literally on the phone every single week with the teams, saying, okay, what are you doing this week? And how can we take advantage of the goals that you've got? How can we drive the change through the technology that you want to achieve? So does that help answer that a little bit?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, those are some great tips.
But then there's also the focus, make it small start, no risk, get the lawyers involved. And also, most importantly, and we'll get to this later, but is every single win, celebrate. You know, every single win, celebrate, and show that the change is happening. And focus on your winners, you know, and make sure that you're using this as a drive for change as well. You know, if for you link it with the other things that are going on. So if one of the things you're trying to do is recruit more people of, you know, a more diversified crew in your team, then make sure the voices that you're promoting are compliant with that. You know, don't just get we always say the proof of value, don't just get a whole bunch of old white guys. You know, make sure this is the view of the company you want it to be. So you can drive all sorts of change through that thought leadership program. But the key bits, you know, coming back to it, author-centric, governance, create once, publish everywhere, and make sure there's feedback, because then that'll drive that change, that engine, and you'll get the flywheel going.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, I think of all my experience in digital marketing, what I've seen win is often a series of small incremental improvements. You know, you can't discount like a small conversion rate improvement on a landing page. You can't discount, you know, even just 1, 2, or 3 lawyers starting to get involved in the content marketing program. You know, small steps are going to lead to big change over time, and the feedback loop, I agree, is really key.
You know, again, kind of law firms are weird organizations that lawyers listen to lawyers, consultants listen to consultants. Don't listen to me. They don't really listen to their business service people as much as they absolutely should, but they do listen to each other. So you've got to just celebrate what they're doing, show that it's working for them, and then get them to be the champions within it, and just drive that change gradually, and link, as I say, hitch it onto existing programs you're running. Make sure that they see that they're winning in the thing that they want to win in. That's key.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. Like, what does the best content look like? What is the stuff? So from Clearview Social's perspective, we have a view into the content that gets the most clicks, likes, comments, shares. And those pieces are actually somewhat wide ranging in terms of what generates a lot of engagement on social media. But generally, I would say there are a few themes that I see intact. Generally, it is content that the existing professionals within the firms would want to share with their colleagues.
Yep.
So it's something that they think they would actually find interesting, either in their practice area or potentially something that their clients would find interesting. And that can be a high bar if a lot of their colleagues on LinkedIn are other attorneys. And another characteristics that I've found is that they actually participate and write some sort of an opinion on the content. Just sharing content without context is less effective than trying to provide a comment or a small snippet with your thoughts about that particular piece of content. So we see it in Clearview Social when we compare our product to just doing it the traditional way, which would be sharing the content on your firm's LinkedIn page, maybe Twitter, maybe Facebook, versus your professionals individually sharing the content out to their social networks. And the stats are pretty surprising. I think when we've done studies on this before, it's 8 times or more clicks, likes, shares, comments on content that's shared by the attorneys to their networks. But that's regardless of the type of content. You can show much higher engagement if that content is considered really shareable, something that would be seen as very relevant to the practice area or their networks. So let's talk about what the best content looks like from your perspective, and how us as marketers can try to empower firms to create that type of content.
Yeah, and what you've said there is, I mean, you guys are the experts in getting content, leveraged. That actually once you've got a decent bit of content, you're absolutely spot on. The best people to share that content is obviously yourself, but is your colleagues. You're arming them with a digital asset that they can leverage to drive positive business outcomes. And you guys make it absolutely dead simple. As far as what the best content looks like, we get asked this all the time. And in some ways, it's a bit of a red herring. I can answer that because I can say, look, we know digestible content works an absolute treat. We know that it should be client relevant. It should be timely. It should be focused on the industry that you're looking after. But actually, the answer to it is the best content that's created by a professional service, by a lawyer or a consultant, is the content that is created by them. The key is to get them going. So the average lawyer in the US and UK, we know this because Sam and Natasha literally measured it, counted it. So we know that the average lawyer in America and in the US, in the US and the UK, the average lawyer creates one piece of authentic content per year. One piece of, wow. The bar's really low. If they create 2, that's 100% better than everyone else. So the first thing is do it. Just get it made. Don't get into the depths of, is a 5-minute podcast better than a 20-minute podcast, or is long form better than short form? Or, lawyers will know their clients. Most of the lawyers that we look after, and it's similar with consultants, but particularly with lawyers, 80% of their billable hours in any one year come from 15 to 20 people. 15 to 20 people. I met one very senior lawyer, and he had 8 people who gave him $4 million a year, right? So what he has to do is look after 8 people. If he can increase their spend by 10%, happy days. If he can get one of those 8 to recommend into another one, happy days. So he knows who his clients are. They know who their clients are. So create content for them. Create and empower your lawyers, because they know who their clients are, and then they'll create the content they want to. I know that's a bit of a, but it's a red herring in that people focus on the detail of how long it should be, or how short, or should it be video, or should it be audio? All these things are great, but just do it. The shift has happened that websites in the 90s was an IT project. Then it turned into, then marketing took over, then BD got interested. Now it's everybody. Everyone's got a stake in your website, in your web presence, in your digital presence. You have to empower them to take charge of their part of it. You can't do it for them. So the best content is the stuff that's created by them. We see that with when people build websites. Spend ages talking about an IT project. Spend ages talking about colors and design. Very, very important. If you've got nothing useful to put in it, if it's not a publishing site from the get-go, you're just going to look like everybody else from 10 years ago. You literally designed the wrong website. So yeah, we're pretty specific on what best content looks like, and that's it's got to be author-centric. It's got to be created by the people who get paid for their knowledge.
So let's suppose you've tried to make those incremental gains as a marketer within a law firm, and you've gotten a little bit of traction. Maybe there are one or two attorneys that would like to participate, but you're having trouble really getting folks to heavily participate in the content strategy and actually write pieces on their own. What about stuff like getting a quote from an attorney that's relevant to a marketing produced article, or trying to get a small contribution? Maybe they don't write the entire long form article, but they're an active participant in the thesis of that piece of content. Have you seen that work well in firms that you've consulted with?
Listen, when I talk, I'm obviously going off on one about people creating their own content, timely content and all that. Anything that gets them out of neutral and their digital presence. People will move slowly, some people will move so far, but anything that moves them from not being present to being present in some way. So to your point, if I'm a team member and I'm a partner and an associate creates a nice piece of content, then me just sharing that does all sorts of great things. And if I just write I did it this morning, Will, my colleague Will, shared a great post. All I did was put it on LinkedIn with, Will created a great post. You should have a read. Here's a summary. I mean, I didn't know. It took me 2 seconds, right? And I've stood on his shoulders and gone, I've got something useful here. Now that looks positive for me, so I feel good about it. It's great for Will because he's created something that I've shared, and it's good for both of our clients because they're seeing us working together, sharing that. So absolutely, you don't have to go. You don't, as I say, you don't have to dive in and suddenly be the one creating all the content. You just have to get out of neutral. That might be, as I say, if there's only one piece of authentic content created per year, then writing 2 is better.
Yeah. Incremental gains.
and sharing 5. We've got I was down with Taylor English, who are a client of ours in Atlanta, and I was with Joe English, who's the named partner. He just shares the content. He doesn't write the content. He just shares it. He loves it. It's a great way for him to manage. It's a great way for him to promote his business, his brand, and it's a great way to give really positive feedback to his lawyers. And we see that with Deloitte. We've seen that with Ropes and Gray. We've seen that, across big law firms like Reed Smith and small law firms. We've got, I know you're up in Buffalo. We've got a 12-person attorney firm up in Buffalo called Colin Law, and they do it. This isn't, you don't need a big team. You don't need a small team. You just need to get people from neutral into active, and sharing is absolutely the right way to do that, as well as creating.
So the first time that I saw a demo of the Passel platform, one thing that I thought was really useful is writing a piece of content off of a quote or a little snippet that you find in a particular article online. And that seemed to be, in my eyes, a good way to get a piece of content rolling and to start to frame a piece of content around a particular thought leader that you might want to discuss in your article or your piece of content. So what about a marketer inside of a law firm trying to grab those quotes and then expanding an article off of that, and that being maybe a seed to a particular article or a blog post?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about inspiration. I mean, I think most people on this call would have tried a thought leadership program kind of 5-10 years ago with a blank screen at 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, going, I'm going to write some thought leadership and I'm going to be brilliant, and I tried, and at 2:10 I'd failed miserably and feeling quite bad about myself. It's hard work to start from nothing. So certainly with all of our proof of values, and always when we first get people using Passel, for example, the first thing is that inspirational piece of commentary piece. They're reading something useful. They can highlight a piece of text in that original article that they want to refer to. They hit the Passel button, and then that turns up on their post as context. So the image is there, that text is there, and they can write down their thoughts. Usually, coming back to what does good content look like? Usually just 300-400 words. We've seen short form, digestible content outperform longer form content when it comes to distribution channels, and obviously it can be measured on things like Lexology, Mondac, JD Supra, your Clearview Social. You can see, how these pieces of content work, and then you can actually say, okay, well, that's working, and you congratulate the lawyer or the consultant who's done it. So yeah.
I really like that format and process for content creation, starting with a quote, a small snippet, could be like a small paragraph, and that could come from an attorney or an outside source, and then trying to get a thought leader inside of the firm to expand upon that. I think
Yeah.
an easy way to get things rolling.
And again, with Clearview Social, it's the ownership piece. It's that they know, they sit next to Bob or they sit next to Jenny, who's their co-worker, their co-lawyer. They've created a piece, and then it's really easy for them to then share it and make good from it, and drive their business.
So let's suppose we've gotten some motion on those incremental gains. The firm is starting to actively participate in the content strategy. We've gotten at least a small portion of the lawyers to start wanting to contribute, whether that's a quote or whether that's a full blog post or whether that's
a podcast or a video.
A video. So some piece of content. So how do we connect that to the right audience? So if we think about the firm's followers, they may have a mix of clients, they might have a mix of other marketers following them. Let's talk about like LinkedIn specifically, which is probably the most relevant channel for this audience. So they may have some other attorneys that are following the firm, for recruiting purposes, or just because they're curious about the firm, or maybe they're colleagues of folks that work at the firm. So how do we connect that piece of content with that audience? I have a few ideas there with regards to how Clearview sees engagement work with our tool and how we can connect the dots there. You're writing for, those are a lot of different groups, and probably the types of content that would resonate with folks that are looking for a job at the law firm versus potential clients of the law firm, versus colleagues of the existing attorneys. Those in a particular practice area, those are very different audiences that we need to serve with our content strategy. So if you're running marketing at a law firm, how do you reach and write for that audience that's in front of you, given all the different personas?
Right. Well, on LinkedIn, the first one, I've seen for years, marketing folk in law in consultative professional service firms saying, I need my people to do LinkedIn, and failing. They run a LinkedIn course, they get a LinkedIn trainer in, they do all that. They're fantastic, but there's no ownership from the experts in the business, the lawyers of LinkedIn. And what we found is there is a chicken and egg in this. We know the answer, which is ownership of content. So what we've seen, and we measure this every time we do a proof of value, what we see is that as soon as the lawyer starts creating content, then their activity increases on average between 3 and 5 times on LinkedIn. We had Rupert from Ropes and Gray when we did their proof of value. The increase in Ropes and Gray lawyers' use of LinkedIn once they started using Passel was 700%, 7 times. So number one, LinkedIn then starts making sense. So what happens is they create content, they share it on LinkedIn. Some lawyers get great feedback on LinkedIn, and you make sure you show them the feedback, and it starts a conversation. And some lawyers say, I didn't get any feedback on my LinkedIn. And you say, well, who are you connected to? They say, well, I'm connected to all the people I was at university with. Well, are you connected to any of your clients? They go, no, I'm not. And you think, well, maybe you should be. And they go, oh. And so then because they've created content, because they now understand that they've got an audience, then they start connecting to the right people. Then they start looking at the reaction of LinkedIn, and then it starts that behavior. Again, it's not immediate, it's a process. But when somebody has success on LinkedIn, then you feed that back to everyone else and say, hey, look at what Julie just did. That's awesome. And she's an associate who's just joined. The partner suddenly go, ooh, how come she's ruling the conversation here? And it's like, well, she's connected to the right people. So that's absolutely key when it comes to those social networks, is actually getting them to own it. But also, and this is where the firm comes in, the marketing people, they can then start directing the content that they want for the channels that they want to use. So we have a client in the UK called Howard Kennedy, and every time they get trainee lawyers in, they use our technology to write a journal. So the trainees write a journal. This week, I was with employment, and this was my experience. This week, I was in real estate, and this is my experience. They do that for 8 weeks. The following year, they use that content as the way to get the following year's trainees in. So that's a recruitment policy. Again, coming back to DEI, your website, your bio page is going to be checked out. You know, your lawyers are going to be checked out by future colleagues. What have you got on there? You know, have you just got, I was a great lawyer, I went to school for a really long time? Or have you got, I'm a great lawyer, I went to school for a really long time, here's my latest thoughts? And have you got voice if you're a young, you know, a young woman who's of color, who's, you know, are they actually diverse as they're talking about? So, you know, you can, there's real ways to drive change here. And the marketing people enable and empower that. And then you can get very specific from a BD perspective. You can write content very deliberately, like this chap did at our consultancy, to arrange meetings in Japan.
Yeah.
He had a goal, he wrote 2 pieces of content, he shared it with the right people, he got the meetings he wanted. So you can be very specific as well.
There was a good little nugget you just mentioned in there that I thought was really good for firm websites. So if you are able to get your lawyers to start participating and actually writing and posting blogs, actually putting that underneath their bio on the website, so that they can have that as a reference. They have the pieces that they've written in the past. They can point folks there if they're interested, and I'm sure that's a great attractor for clients as well if they'd like to kind of learn about the thinking of that attorney.
I always say it's 2 things. Number one, if you're building a website, you've got to give every stakeholder their part of the website so they own it. The part of the website for you know, we sell Passel to companies that have bio pages, essentially. And that's because they own that bio page. And if you can say, hey, when you create a great piece of content, it's going to go on there. And guess what? When one of those 15 people who give you 80% of your billable hours recommends and refers you, the very first thing that person who's been referred to you is going to do is go to your bio page. What are they going to see there? You know, what's going to be showing your knowledge, what's going to be showing your personality, what's going to be showing who you are and what you know. And it shortens that eminence gap. You know, we talk about eminence gap being what you know, and what your clients, prospects, and future colleagues know. You know, and the job of marketing and comms is to shorten that eminence gap. And of course, that comes through an effective thought leadership program. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I was thinking about another point you were talking through there when we were referring to some of the different audiences and how these different bio pages could connect with that. So if you have an attorney that's focused in a particular practice area, their clients are going to be interested in that topic area. Probably their colleagues are also, some of them, interested in that practice area. So that kind of self-selects for the type of content that they would be producing, and also self-selects for the type of content that would get the most engagement from their existing LinkedIn network. So, you know, when it comes time to show attorneys in your firm ROI on a strategy like this, you want to show that piece of content that you created, it got this number of clicks, it got this number of shares, likes, and those are things that are much easier to show if the content is written specifically for your network. Even if you're on the services side of the law firm, let's suppose you work in recruiting and HR, you're tasked with bringing in really high quality candidates, and content that you post and you share for your audience can actually markedly move the needle on how much you need to pay to get a good candidate in. So an HR professional in a law firm should be expanding their LinkedIn network, trying to connect the types of content that would draw in highly qualified candidates, and be sharing that firm produced content with their audience, as well as job posts, and trying to put those out there so folks know that they exist. So when we see firms that have a lot of success with Clearview Social use that to their best advantage, they create groups which will be specific to different practice area. So perfect. They'll have an RSS feed set up with different blogs that they'd like to follow. They will have certainly all the pieces of firm produced content, and they will also be putting in any job posts or posts they're putting up on their corporate LinkedIn page, and then they'll send that content out in queues to individual groups within the firm. And that group could be the HR group, that could be a particular practice area group, that could be even a group of partners that would like to participate in the LinkedIn strategy, but don't want to play an active role. Like you mentioned, you work with a client that really wants to share other colleagues' content, but doesn't want to play a hand in producing it, but they probably have a lot of influence when they share it. Probably makes the junior attorneys feel really good when that individual shares it. And I would imagine their network probably can bring a lot of clicks, likes, and shares to the content. So that could be a particular group. And inside of Clearview, we've seen some groups designate certain managing partners that don't want to actively participate in content production, but they're happy to participate in the sharing of the content because their network's quite influential. They opt into this feature called Virtual Assistant, where it auto shares to their profile, auto schedules out. So they don't have to, they basically designated that role to marketing. They can still participate, getting the content out there, getting that credit to the folks in the firm that participated in writing it, and they're able to distribute it in a way that drives maximum impact. So
and that's true with Joe English, at Taylor English. He's in the growth mode. His primary goal is to attract great talent to Taylor English. Now, that's why he's sharing content. He's doing it very specifically to drive new, lateral hires. He wants more lawyers. So he's doing that very specifically. There's I think that
he's probably the top HR professional at the firm.
That's it. Yeah, it's you end up with that, as I say, that empowerment to actually own that space that's yours. And for Clearview Social, that the cross-sell idea is crucial. That the lawyer, they don't even know half the time what their colleagues know, and so being able to share it and then create content about what they know and then share it very effectively. We've got a client, Reed Smith. And they use Passel very effectively to launch their ESG program. Now, traditionally in a law firm, you do a big launch here, and there'll be a lot of PR and websites and blah, blah, blah. What they did, and we were talking about the LMA Mid-Atlantic event that's happening next in a couple of weeks in DC. And Phil, the global head of communications there, is going to be talking to me about this. But basically what he did is he started his lawyers writing content about ESG 6 months before, so that by the time he launched, he had 90 pieces of timely, client relevant content all about ESG. And of course, they all have ownership of that program before they launch, and the clients know all about it before they launch. So you can use this very effectively to drive strategic goals within firms, and you do it as teams as well as individuals. So absolutely.
I want to dig more into the feedback loop, and also we'd love to get any questions answered. So there is a Q&A button in the webinar if you'd like to ask some questions. Maybe as we're going through this last set of questions with James, we can answer any questions that come up. So I'm thinking through the feedback loop and trying to create that in such a way so lawyers feel really empowered to want to create the content and to keep participating in the program. Sometimes there are blog posts that just don't get a lot of traction. Maybe there is a lot of effort in some cases going towards a piece of thought leadership content in a particular practice area, but maybe that attorney didn't write it in a way where it really resonated with their audience, or maybe it wasn't syndicated properly such that the social following of the individuals that shared it clicked, liked, and shared on it. And the feedback loop can be challenging. I would say very, very often folks are putting out content that gets lost in the shuffle. There's a lot of content being put out by a lot of firms. There's a lot of just content being published, competing for folks' attention, especially on a network like LinkedIn, and getting that feedback back to the attorneys so that they feel very positive about it is something that's really, really important for a successful content marketing program, and to try to drive a cultural change where attorneys would like to participate in being thought leaders online. So let's talk about that feedback loop and maybe some examples where you've seen it work really well and it's actually driven cultural change within the organization's approach to creating content.
I think it's linked with that create once, publish everywhere. So once that piece of content has been created, use it, sweat every single ounce of effort out of it. So the first thing is, obviously get the lawyers to understand how they can quickly and easily share it themselves with the people who are important to them. Now that's we've talked a lot about LinkedIn, but also, and importantly, most lawyers communicate with their clients via email. So we've got a tool called Istatoy. I saw this and thought of you. Now it's an email with a link in. There's no rocket science technology here, but we set it up that way. I saw this and thought of you, because it gets over that lawyer or that consultant's reservations to contact a client or a prospect out of the blue. So it makes it just, hey, they're never going to write to someone and say, hey, I haven't talked to you since before the summer. Have you got any work for me? Because it's weird and icky and they don't like it. But if they're sharing something of knowledge, they're sharing their own knowledge or their colleagues' knowledge, that's a really easy email to send. So I saw this and thought of you. Here's a link to the article, the post I just wrote, or here's a link to the podcast my colleague just created. So that works an absolute treat just in direct feedback, because I get an email back.
Yeah, that's great.
The other feedback, and this is from the firm, so the firm then can also sweat that asset. So the firm shares it on LinkedIn, the firm shares it on Clearview Social, it goes out, and the firm shares it on other tools, other distribution tools. But the key thing is that feedback doesn't just sit with comms or with BD or with marketing. The feedback goes straight back to the lawyers. So in our dashboard, the lawyer can go in, they can say, I created this piece of content. Okay, these are the people, these are the firms, these are the individuals who read that post on these distribution channels. And that's, it doesn't matter where they do that, as long as the lawyer themselves is in control of seeing that the effort they made had a result. And then also there's coaching involved. So the BD people start saying, hey, did you have a look at LinkedIn? You shared that post. Did you see those people reacted? What you could do now is you could write them a little note on direct message on LinkedIn. Now that sounds like you're teaching somebody something very simple, but for lawyers, they might not think that straight away. So you can show them how to do that. That when somebody likes it, then you can say thank you for the like. So there's a bit of coaching there, but that feedback has to be simple. It has to be relevant to them, and their efforts must be attributable. So when they've done something, again, coming back to author-centric creation, governance that's quick and easy and transparent, but then when they've done something, once it's shared effectively, they're seeing the impact of it in a very personal way. And then finally, and most importantly, I think, is it's then celebrated. So it's celebrated. As soon as something good happens, as soon as somebody just gets that 4 meetings in Japan off 2 posts, you tell everyone, look at what Bob did. He's amazing. Wish you were like Bob, or whatever it is. But you can, that again, what we do a lot of with our client success team is we build lots of templates of feedback, and we do a lot of the work, frankly, so that our marketing and BD folk can then look awesome within their firm to those lawyers saying, hey, look at what happened. And that's really important. So that celebrated part of the feedback. Does that make sense?
I love the idea of a group email after a success, or Slack or Teams, whatever format you use inside of your firm, making sure that they're aware that happened. If they use a tool like Clearview, there's a leaderboard, so you can highlight who's actually sharing the most and getting the most engagement on the content from a content production standpoint, highlighting who produced the most blogs, maybe like a quarter end or a year end summary, and how much engagement those got. Those are definitely things to be celebrated to keep the program moving, keep that flywheel momentum, picking up. And I can see this being really impactful, especially as new attorneys are coming into firms that maybe are a little more social media centric. They're younger, they're more comfortable putting themselves out there online.
Well, it's more than that. They have a total expectation of it.
Yeah. And
why would you not give me a voice? Like, why wouldn't, and we hear this from our clients saying we've got an associate, and part of the reason is they want their voice. They want to be, they're not going to wait until someone says they can be partner. It just doesn't work that way anymore. So they want, and we've seen the battle for talent. But when those people come in, they want their voice. They want to be shown. They want to showcase their expertise. And of course, and similarly with you guys, it's co-authoring. Working together, working as a team. We've got a client in the UK called Lewis Silkin, and the head of advertising, Brinsley, there holds a meeting with 40 of his lawyers. They're all in the advertising team. Every single month, they say, right, who's creating content? Who did well last month? How are we getting our messaging across? What are we linking? What events are we going to? And how are we going to create content around those events? What reports have we got? What's happening in the world? And it's built into the team dynamic, because why wouldn't you be present online in the same way as you are present physically?
I think there is going to be a tectonic shift in how law firms start to see the importance of content production. Like you mentioned, the example of physical presence versus digital presence. And, I think we're all in the right place, right time right now for this shift. And we're going to see, more attorneys coming into firms that care about this and would like to actively participate. And, it's up to us to help drive that change and to try to position the right tools in front of them so it becomes easy for them to participate, and to drive that cultural shift so that we could see, we don't want junk content going out in the internet and being shared by law firm pages and by attorneys at our firms. We want high quality content, and there are professionals inside the firms that have that in their head. We just need to get it into the keyboard and make sure it's pushed out there to the right people. So
and I think on that, it's really important that digital service providers like us work together, as we are. This is really important to me, is that we come with complete solutions, that we're already joined up, so that the market, as I say, marketeers, the business development, the comms people in a law firm they got enough to do without needing to introduce us to each other. So that we're all joined, technically we're all joined, we understand each other's businesses, and we know how to help them make the most. Not, when I go in there to a client, I don't just talk about how to make the most out of Hassel, but how to make the most out of Clearview Social and Hassel together. And that's really crucial, that they're getting absolute maximum, benefit for their buck. The other thing that I see, and I do see economic headwinds coming, but I also hear of law firms now starting to look at, I talked to a law firm the other day, their real estate bill for the year is $90 million. Now, they're not spending that on their digital presence yet, but they're not going to be spending $90 million in 2 years' time on their real estate. So
there'll be a shift.
So there's movement there, and there's anchoring there as far as those digital, those people, those leaders within law firms and consultancies who are driving this change. There's anchoring of spend, and there's a story there that we can help them with as well.
Love it. Well, James and I are on this webinar today because we have mutual clients and really have a lot of respect for the tools that both of our teams have built. So just to give you all a few minutes in case you have meetings coming up, we'll wrap a little bit early. And thank you very, very much for taking the time today. We've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, James, for joining us on the talk today. And I hope to see you all up at an upcoming legal conference.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Looking forward to seeing you in person. Thank you ever so much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.